All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome into today's edition of In the Game. I am your host, Hustle, and today we have a very, very special edition, and I'm joined by a guest from Pixelmon themselves, which is going to be huge, and you're going to want to see this episode because the value that they have been adding to the project, LiquidX Studios has been adding to Pixelmon ever since their acquisition. We're going to talk all about that in this edition because everyone infamously remembers Kevin, but now the revamped art and the minds behind the project, I think, is going to absolutely shock everyone. After their $70 million fundraise that went wrong, things are absolutely turning around. So you're going to want to stick around, like the video if you enjoy, and subscribe for more. Shout out to our sponsors quickly: Animoca Brands, Myria, MEXC, as well as Unix Gaming. You can check out all of our sponsors down in the description below. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Giulio from LiquidX Studios. How are you doing today?
Hey, Hustle. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to get into this one because I think everyone, like mentioned, whenever they think of Pixelmon still, they think of everything that happened at the initial stages and the initial art. And I think that the good catch up on the project and what you guys have added to really the utility, the value, the art, and everything, I think it's super impressive. So I'm stoked for you to be able to join us. And if you want to just kind of give an intro to yourself really quickly as far as your background and what led you into the NFT space and more so, and maybe even NFT gaming.
Oh, look, certainly still everybody or a big chunk of the public out there still thinks about good old Kevin. So good to have this and then talk about a few other sides of the project, even if in the end, we all accepted Kevin and we all love Kevin. But a little bit of background about myself. As I said, name's Giulio. I'm the co-founder of LiquidX. LiquidX is basically a game development studio with a M&A small department placed in front of it. We acquire IP that we find interesting, and then we bring our studio capabilities ranging from, normal Unreal Engine development from Web 2 all the way to tokenomics design to the project. And Pixelmon is one of our first acquisitions together with Anime Metaverse. I'm Italian by origin, moved to Southeast Asia 10 years ago, and I'm relatively new to Web3. I've been in Web3 only for a year, just about a year, as a full-time basis. My last 13 years of career were actually spent in between finance, so the good old days of working in investment banking and JP Morgan. But then quite soon after that, I moved to venture capital, and from venture capital to actually becoming a founder. I was a co-founder in a large e-commerce player that's sprouted in Southeast Asia across 8 markets. It was an ups and downs journey, a marathon, 8 years in the building, but it culminated 8 years in with a good IPO back in Europe. So good outcome for the company, for the employees, for us. And a couple of years post IPO, I decided to move on, and that's when I jumped into Web3. You asked me why Web3, why gaming? Well, look, I always knew that I liked the first phases of the entrepreneurial journey. I knew that even with the IPO happening and the company, let's say, professionalizing more and more, what I wanted to do next was to be a founder again. And while the first time around as a founder, I didn't really pick the industry, I decided I wanted to be a founder and then let say market opportunity and venture capital interest guide me towards the business model. This time around, with a little bit more experience under the belt and also thanks to the IPO appetite for risk, I decided that I wanted to do what I wanted to do on my own terms, and that's why we jumped into gaming. Now, we picked gaming because I'm a gamer. We picked gaming because I wanted to do that when I was a kid. I wanted to build games, even if then I didn't end up studying development or engineering. But why Web3? Well, Web3 is instead something that I was doing on the side since 2017, and I'd built a community of friends down here in Southeast Asia. I didn't stumble upon it myself. I was lucky enough that actually our chief of staff back in the e-commerce in 2016 joined a company called Monaco. Monaco is crypto.com. And he joined it when they had 9 employees. That's how I was exposed to it first.
Wow.
Our chief commercial officer left to create the mobile gaming department of a company called Garena. I don't know if you've heard about Garena, but it's another big player in the space. So I was actually, a lot more exposure for me happened through just witnessing where my old co-founders or co-workers went, and then realizing that those were great avenues. So yeah, I've been dabbling in Web3 since the good old first ICO days. Moved into Web3 kind of gaming interest when I started looking at what Axie was doing in the Philippines, a market I've been very active in, and Vietnam around a year and a half ago. Not that I was a big fan of play to earn, but certainly from a business standpoint, what they were doing was very interesting. And so I said, look, I believe in these two things. I believe in blockchain as a technology. I believe it can add great advantages to any industry. But gaming can be an early adopter. We'll touch on that later. And I want to do gaming. And I have the luxury to decide and pick. And so LiquidX was born.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think that once we get into, your concept, as you call, right of game, and once we talk a little more about that side of things and the intricacies in the project, and I really think it's one of the sharpest, views in the space. So I'm excited to dive into that. But first and foremost, I think a lot of people are going to be curious, like, as LiquidX, what drove you guys to want to acquire Pixelmon after everything that had gone on with the infamous Kevin? And really, like, when you look at Kevin versus now, the artwork that y'all are producing, it's absolutely incredible. And this is actually like what was promised, at the front end of the project. So what really made you guys want to take on this challenge in particular?
Well, look, let's touch a little bit on a little bit of history. When LiquidX was born, I mean, we didn't even know what Pixelmon was. We had never heard of it. But we put feelers out there with our friends and contacts, both in crypto and venture capital. So both the alpha groups and let's say the institutional investors, and said, look, we're out here to buy. And our mandate back then, if I remember correctly, was we want early stage IP with a community that is very, very resiliently attached to that IP. But the requirement is that project needs to need our help, because approaching a project that is super successful with an M&A proposition, especially we're talking still about the bull market days, you're just going to end up overpaying and creating a big exit for some founders without them spending a lot of more time on it. So we just, and of course the project had to be a Web3 gaming project post initial mint to give some proof to that, let's say, kickoff. You might ask, why were we looking to acquire rather than do it ourselves? Well, it was just a matter of speed to market. We knew we were good, or essentially we had the ability to raise capital fast. We knew how to build teams and execute fast, but often striking the right game design or proposition of brand takes a lot of hit and miss. So M&A was just a way to hit the ground running faster. And look, they introduced us to a lot of projects, a lot of good ones. We put out there a few offers. One was picked up. It was Anime Metaverse. It was a case of a good project where the founder was young and wanted some executional support, but she was very strong on the art side. She wanted executional support on the development and IP building side. And then somebody introduced us to Pixelmon, and it was late March. So the reveal had just happened. The news was out. And we were a bit skeptic, but we took that call. And look, without going into too much detail, but that call revealed a few things. One, that the funds were all there. So 23,000 plus ETH were in the treasury and showed to us live on that call. That there was a very strong alignment of mandate. So what the Pixelmon founder wanted was somebody to build a game that would, yes, take a controlling stake in the project, but so that none of the parties had a financial exit unless the game was ever successful, and the parties were willing to sign off on that. The funds would accompany the project not be able to be distributed as dividends or anything, but just had to be dedicated to the game building. Those were two things. The third thing was we ran our own on-chain analysis of the holders and realized, very surprisingly, that actually while there was that whole fanfare going on of the debacle of the art, there was actually a very resilient group of whales and holders that were not selling. We started talking to them, and we realized that they saw what we saw, which was they loved the game design, the nostalgia that it brought up. And look, I'm old enough to have watched the first episode of Pokemon when it hit Italian television channels, and that was my first game also on Game Boy. So there was a feeling of nostalgia. Lastly, and we'll get to this when you speak about right of game, but the monster hunting and collecting game type, so the game genre, fits like a glove a proposition of right of game and the first, let's say, proof of concept of it. And right of game was something that we already had in our minds. That was our starting theory. That's where we saw NFT utility coming in. So this was a project that fit from every point of view. The founder was willing to take a big step back, not be operationally involved, as long as the project went in the right direction. The last thing, the big requirement, and what made us think a lot about it, was that one of us had to go. This was big enough that one of us would have to go in full time. It wasn't our initial proposition of essentially backing a founder and helping him or her execute. So we thought about that quite a bit. But again, because I had a feeling, the same feeling of nostalgia, and I strongly believed in it, we went ahead. And one last thing, because I come from Web 2, I've seen how companies evolve over 10 years. I've gone through down rounds, retrenchments, moments of extreme glory, and moments of extreme sadness in managing a company. So maybe I look at what happened with the reveal in February as a bleep in time. And I don't think it actually affects the potential of a company over the long term. Last small thing, if you're positioning yourself as a studio that is going to help founders execute better, what better way than to position yourselves than to help the project, turn around the project that everybody's given up on? Lots of reasons, long answer. But
yeah, no, it's perfect. I think as an ambitious businessman, I think that this is absolutely a great challenge to tackle, and I think that it's one that you guys are obviously doing a fantastic job of turning around. So, talk a little bit maybe about some of the things that have gone on in the project ever since LiquidX has taken over. Obviously, the art is looking fantastic. I know you guys have your hands in this, in the turnaround, and kind of talk about the progress and really like where the vision for the game is going forward.
Look, when we took it on, I realized that I had to split this into what I call 3 phases. The 3 phases for me were regaining trust, phase 1, to prove game development capabilities, 3, deliver great final product and take it to market. Now, within regaining trust, the way I look at it is, first of all, somebody's going to go out there, put his face in front of this and bat for it. And that was my personal job. So from the 30th of March to today, I just said, okay, I'm going to do weekly AMAs or Twitch sessions or spaces or Twitch sessions by voice. And daily, I'm going to answer any question from anyone, no matter how confrontational they are, in our public Discord, in a non-holder gated channel. And the first weeks, it was 5 hours of typing per day in those questions. Now it's some days I don't get questions. Of course, the channel is very active on other channels. The server is very active on other channels, but people are not challenging us anymore. So it's first of all putting myself up front and delivering a steady tone, no overpromising. It's just every day I'm here, I'm executing, and the team is too. And sometimes I won't have the answers yet, but I'm here to answer and account for it. Second, we had to over-deliver on what the project had failed, and that was the art. So we redid the art of the creatures in super high poly, so not anymore the voxelated style, animating every single one and giving every single Pixelmon his own sound. So like a dog woofers and a cow meows. We did that while contracting exclusively a studio in Japan to work on all 4 evolutions. So we contracted exclusively for 200 Pixelmon. This was after testing out 5 different studios, ranging from AAA gaming studios to animation-oriented studios. The one we picked in the end is actually an animation-oriented one, not a gaming one, for the NFT art. While then there is gaming profiles that do what is called retopology to mid-poly and low-poly for PC usage and mobile usage. Then we, again, over-deliver, provide everybody with something they were not expecting, so a plus. So we gave everybody a trainer. The trainer started airdropping 4 weeks ago. Trainers were designed by the lead character artist of Blizzard, same team that did the Overwatch characters. Medieval oriented, you can see some of their gear here on the website. They're on OpenSea now. And then start giving a bunch of other information, like start giving some information on write of games, start writing the first lore pieces, so building the world. Anyway, that's trust. Then development capabilities. We just released some very interesting clips. You can find them on our Instagram, on our Twitter, clips of gameplay. You can, if you scroll a bit down, you'll find it. But the objective is basically in the first half of next year, show a vertical slice of the game. A vertical slice of the game is essentially not an alpha. It's actually something that is more advanced than an alpha, but is only an instance of the game. In this case, we're taking combat and showing only combat in an already polished way. And we're planning to do that in the first half of next year. And actually, it's a playable instance. It's not a commercial product. It's not going to generate revenues, but holders can play. Lastly, the full game. And the full game means, frankly, don't build a AAA game by commissioning somebody else to build it for you. You build a that's one of the trainers who started to scroll through. You build a AAA game by having a great in-house team and leveraging great external partners. So hire a AAA team. We have our art director used to be an art director for Electronic Arts. Our senior producer was the senior producer and lead producer on Tekken. Our game designer was lead game designer on the entire Splinter Cell series. Our lead developer worked on Cyberpunk, worked on Final Fantasy 15. Our lead technical artist worked with Ubisoft. Go on and on and on. That team is now on board. There's more than 60 people on board, and these leaders are hiring more and more around them. And they are going to build a AAA game. Now, is it going to be a successful AAA game of great success or mid-level success? That we're going to know in in 1 to 1.5 years time. But it is going to be a AAA game.
That's fantastic. And I think that's what people were expecting whenever the project was being marketed up front. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like living up to the expectations that were initially promised but couldn't be delivered. Y'all are absolutely killing it on every single front. And how will the economy work inside of Pixelmon? So we have the trainers, and you have the Pixelmon. So, and the trainers, by the way, look really, really dope. I think that those look really cool. kind of talk about the economics within the game, because I know that you have a fantastic, insight and theory on the way that economics should work inside these games. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So first, I'll take a step back and say, I think one thing, when I was observing the crypto gaming space last year and the first half of this year, one of the first things, and even frankly, during the first question, all the questions I got from our holders earlier this year, one thing that kept popping to me is there are investors that have an investment objective, an ROI objective of the product, asking me questions as if they were the consumers, the final consumers of the project. Now, and that's not wrong per se. A lot of NFT holders want to play the game, and they should. But those two interests are ultimately need to be decoupled. And that's the first thing that needs to be done. And if you don't decouple them, and this is not to accuse any project or any pre-existing game, but by definition in economics, a economy where the same group of actors both feeds the economy and takes from the economy is by a Ponzi. That's the definition of Ponzi. So the first thing one needs to do is, okay, we have different groups of actors and we cater to those actors differently. Now, there's a group of actors that are NFT holders right now. These are investors. They might become players, they might become consumers. I'm sure the shareholders of Uber also ride in Uber, but they need to be observed from two different angles when they perform those two different actions. So our holders are our investors. And then we have gamers. Let's just put them on the side as if they were a separate group for a moment. And ultimately, if we're going to have a successful, sustainable tokenomics economy, it's not so much about designing the perfect upfront tokenomics. That's impossible. Economies are a constant adjustment process. That's how you keep economies alive. But the first thing you need to do to make economy sustainable is make sure that both actors participate. So one gives something to the economy and takes something back that is different than what the other one gives and takes back. Now, if we want to give back to holders real profit, not just that profit that is my exit, your entry is my exit type, then we need a mass adoption game. Mass adoption, by definition at this moment in time, means Web 2. But it needs to cater to Web 2 players. Now, if you take, though, a lot of NFT holders, they also conceive their NFTs as exclusive assets. So they start wondering, well, am I going to be the only one in the game with a certain asset? Well, those two assumptions are immediately in contradiction. Because if assets are exclusive in free-to-play gaming, then by definition, to a certain group of people, which are the investors, by definition, you start losing ground on building that mass group of gamers. So let's separate the two groups was our first assumption. We need to create a game that is usable in mass by Web 2 users. And that means creating a game that upfront looks like a Web 2 game and can be played without, just like the great stuff that Reddit is doing right now. You can access all the assets in this game without ever having to create a wallet, without ever having to actually use directly cryptocurrencies. So you're talking basically about a custodial wallet ecosystem, a fiat on-ramp portal, et cetera, et cetera. What are they actually using in game? So they should be using NFTs because there's great value down the line, and we all believe in that, in ownership of your in-game assets. Just that they don't even need to know they are NFTs unless they want to upgrade to become a Web3 players of the game, at which point they just create their external wallet and connect it to their account. Now, this said, if there's going to be millions of players playing, and we've got 10,000 Pixelmons out there that are extremely exclusive, how are we going to not dilute the current holders? Well, that's why you separate the two groups, and that's what Right of Game is. A Right of Game is a two-tier NFT structure. L1 NFTs, and here it's also interesting because the protocols layers help us explain it, but our current NFTs are built on L1 Ethereum, we call them Genesis NFTs in the right of game terminology. They are not playable assets. They represent the right of in-game usage to certain assets, and essentially are then licensing usage, and don't take this as legal terminology, but more as a way to explain to everybody what I'm talking about. They're licensing usage to the Web2 players that are instead using L2 copies of the L1s. And the L1s to L2 ratio is not 1-to-1. The L2 copies are unlimited. So in essence, if you own that little red devil on screen right now, it's called a Borg. If you use a Borg in game, you are essentially using the rights of Borg that come from the L1 Genesis NFTs. And whenever you generate microtransaction revenue that is tied to Borg, that revenue goes, of course, to the game, but then the game redistributes it to Borg L1 holders. So you essentially have the L1 holders that receive revenue that is proportional to the success of that asset in the game. And what you how do you calculate success of an asset in game? There's many ways. The easiest direct way that we are experimenting with as a first round is revenue generation. So while every Pixelmon can be found in game and captured as it should be, you can also access some of them as you level up through purchase or through normal free-to-play microtransaction purchases. And if you scroll a little bit further down, you will also see that you can buy all sorts of upgrades, from purely visual cosmetic skins, like the golden skin you see on the right, to assets that have some form of also stat utility, to assets that have no visual impact but a stat utility, like the dry fire ability. And those are all the typical, proven, by the way, model that generates 70% of video game revenue, which is more than the entire film industry alone. That's 70%. It's a proven revenue model. And you're then redirecting it back to Borg holders. So the Genesis holders just have to stake and receive income. That's what right of game is. Now, when you take that from a wider picture, so not just Borg, but you could do that with any asset in game. And so you can achieve the full decentralization of game ownership. You could do that. The paradox of it is you can do it with characters, you can do it with weapons, you can do it with pieces of the map. You can even do it with less tangible assets. So we're not experimenting on it right now, but you could do it with quests. You could own a quest, and anything and then have just a formula that then ties basically the utility you should get back, the revenue you should receive back from the fact that you've given that quest utility to the game. And here we go back to why does this fit so well then with the collecting and the monster hunting genre? Because when you want to do a proof of concept of a new revenue model or a new tokenomics ecosystem, of course you want to start on the right foot with a model that fits it better than others. And monster collecting and monster growing and training fits it so much better because of the collectible side there is to it. How much a player really wants to upgrade their creatures. Now, last, and then I'll move. I'll let you ask more questions. But what we actually see here is, and I was having a conversation. I won't name him, but with a CEO that has done tons of work on MMOs. Really successful, like 20 years in the MMO industry, has worked on the first MMO ever made. And his question to me was, okay, this solves the typical Web3 conflict of holders to investors. Congrats, that's good. But as a guy that has been for 25 years in the gaming industry, I still have one question, is what he asked me. He asked me, why would I even have this problem in the first place? So why would I bring Web3 into my game? Now, that then raises two other benefits from it. And my answer is dual. First, there is a benefit to the gamers. And that benefit is that long-term, ultimately, you are running the ecosystem on L2 NFTs that they can own and they can port between games. And that's why we're building 2 games, not 1, because that's the other proof of concept we want to create. We want to let people move from one to the other. And that's very powerful if you think about how many of the games out there have more than 1 version. Most of them, anyone that is successful. Even if right now gamers don't think that's something they want, I think we're all convinced that once they have it, it's something they will want. That's for gamers. But then the CEO says, okay, but what about for studios? Why would a studio do it unless they really believe in this long-term point for gamers? Well, content scalability is the biggest problem that very successful games have. Very, very successful games need to continuously, that have just struck, that perfect game loop, need to keep creating content to keep people reiterating the same kind of game loop on different content. And so content scalability becomes the biggest bottleneck to longevity of a lot of ecosystems. And it's particularly true with MMO ecosystems. What is content scalability in MMOs? Items, characters, map, and quest expansions, these 4 elements. Now, think of taking right of game to the next level, where you've done the first version of Pixelmon. It's moderately successful. It's an open world game. You've got a couple of 100 species of Pixelmons, 1,000 gear items, and say 100 kilometers square of map. And you say, okay, now I want to expand it. You could ask creators to come in your space and expand your game. You could have a team from a university, you could have a team of extra capacity developers, you could have a bunch of freelancers designing a new Pixelmon, submitting it to the DAO. The DAO of that tribe, so we would have 4 of them, 1 by element, says yay, nay. Yay, what happens is then it goes into full development. There's a concept art stage. Gets developed according to the specs of the portal. We would have a set of creator tools created there, very similar to what Roblox does, by the way. But the difference is that when it is approved to enter the game, instead of being a centralized account like a YouTube account or a Roblox creator account, what you do is you mint new Genesis NFTs. So this creator then has all of his Genesis NFTs and can do a bunch of stuff with them. He can hold them and earn yield from the L2s that go in game. He can sell them up front. He can to finance his work. He can in a world where we hope this stuff starts being accepted by the financial institutions, and I think it's going to happen, no matter the setbacks that some actors in the ecosystem bring. He can mortgage, he can leverage them as collateral against a loan, etc., etc. So essentially, now creators have NFTs backing their ownership accounts, and a decentralized revenue transmission model, and your game can constantly expand in a decentralized way. That's the real Grail vision, that ultimately right of game is a creator economy enablement system where you can do in gaming what YouTube has done to video.
And it's exactly, it's the perfect model to be able to actually replicate as much as possible actual game economics, but bringing the best sides of Web3 technology into it, the ownership and the actual ability to, I would say more than anything, monetize your time, right? Gaming is, you put a lot of time into it, just almost like a job, even if you're not playing it like a job. And the unfortunate thing with this industry is the first games were set up to be jobs, right? With the Ponzi-nomics, like if I play the game 6 hours today, I should make X amount of money. That's not how it should be. It should literally just be an experience with the best parts of the NFT technology on top of it, with the skins, with the trainer and gear. I think it's brilliant. And I think that everything that you guys have done so far with the project has been nothing but top tier. So let me just leave it off with one more question. What are you most excited about coming up in the ecosystem? And then, where can people get more information and dive into Pixelmon?
Well, look, most excited. So we've revealed our trainers. That was a big milestone. We are, in a couple of weeks, we're going to go full body. So right now, as you saw, the trainers are PFPs. But actually, the trainers are, the holding a trainer gives you the right to the full body rigged 3D assets. So those are going live for download in a week. So a little bit like with a Clone X. With the difference that these would be fully rigged on all assets. You're able to download your trainer assets and use them across ecosystems. But most of all, in January, we're going to release the full tokenomics white paper. And within Q1, we're going to have the first of our holders testing the alpha of the combat, so the vertical slice I was telling you about. And then we're planning a big event to actually showcase the alpha of the open world late next year, hopefully at Token 2049. These are our big milestones, if I have to think in a 9-month horizon, some of our biggest milestones. So the tokenomics one, the alpha of combat, and then the alpha of open world. Very excited also by just having a AAA team. It's all come together, the last members of it, the senior members of the leadership team in the last month. What I'm learning by people that have had, like say, 20, 25 years of experience, ranging from Sony to Ubisoft to Electronic Arts, is amazing. The speed at which we're going is revolutionary. Where can people find more information? Jump on our website, pixelmon.ai, spend some time on our lore, spend some time on our zoology pages. We're really building a world. We're building an IP. We're not just building a game as a one-off. Spend some time in our Discord channel. If you want to ask me any question there's that channel, CEO questions. As I said, I answer daily. And lastly, our Twitter, Pixelmon.
Had to give it a refollow there, hadn't actually, we follow each other, but I had to give it a refollow there, and I think that definitely with everything that you guys have done, that everyone out there should go follow Pixelmon and definitely keep their eyes on it, because I think one last thing I'll say too, if you guys successfully come out with this product and absolutely kill it, that is going to be one of the biggest case studies for still the power of community and branding inside of, Web3 technology and in just business in general. Right? Because Pixelmon was such a big name regardless of how it began. But now you guys have really got it to where it should be. And I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join me this evening for you and this morning for me. Glad we could make the time zones work, and really excited to get more information out there, because I think a lot of people may have just kind of put Pixelmon to bed after they heard all the stuff in the hoopla that went on. So I think this will open some eyes and really enlighten people on what's going on behind the scenes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Look, Hustle, it's thanks to people like you that help us spread the message and are open to, turnarounds and new ideas and new ways of looking things that we can actually leverage the power of community and make things happen. So thank you.
I appreciate it. We're the crazy ones now, but I think that this industry is just sprouting, and I think we have years and years to come to see where this technology evolves in real world business and first and foremost gaming. So guys, if you got value out of this video, like the video and subscribe for more, and check out Pixelmon for more information on everything we talked about in today's show. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another show. Play well, my friends.